How to make infusions suck less. I know what you're probably thinking. Fun, infusion, why is she laughing? Is she serious? Because this kind of sucks. Infusions happen in infusion centers and the chairs are comfortable, but the rooms are cold. You're there a long time. The machines are beeping. And it's really clear that you're in a place where people are fighting for their lives. But you have to be there. You get to be there because that's what's going to obliterate your cancer. So, since you got to be there, why don't we figure out a way to make them some of your favorite days of the week? I'm not crazy. I did this. I was really intentional about it. All right, the first thing is the reframe. Stop thinking of chemo as something you have to do, miserable. It's just thinking about it as something you get to do. Make it your cancer obliteration day, the day you are actively attacking this unwelcome invader into your body. You can take a nap, I did, but I wasn't passive as I approached my cancer obliteration day. I put on my armor and I was ready to go. I was not a victim receiving poison. I was a survivor deploying all my resources to make this obliteration successful. And here's what you find out. When you make it suck less, or you actually bring happiness tripwires into something like your infusions, it's helping you. It's releasing dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin into your bloodstream, which makes you feel better, makes you feel closer, and bolsters your immune system. So, happiness tripwires in your way on infusion day, that's not just nice. It's good medicine. I called it happiness tripwires. They're things you trip across that make you happy. They're small, very, and they're planned, but they kind of give you a moment of a smile, a moment of lightness in something that's heavy and dark. And my secret was to stack them up, concentrate them, so that on infusion days, I had tripwires upon tripwires upon tripwires. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay, so first, I want to talk about the morning ritual. I was doing cold capping, and DigniCap recommended that I didn't wash my hair except once a week. So I did it on infusion day, which means I got a day of just self-care first thing in the morning. As I got myself ready, I couldn't blow dry it. I got a hug from my daughter. She's running out, I'm running out. Felt normal, but the hug was good. I'd get a text from my high school friend sending me emoji kisses. Nothing elaborate, but something to say, I see you, I'm with you. I'd get another text from another friend of the crazy thing her dog did that day. Another smile. They're very small, but it was helpful. Every week, a different friend drove me to my infusion. There were different people who signed up. I got 20 minutes of conversation, catching up on my friend's life. Felt normal. It was friendship, not cancer. It was connection. Then we arrive at the infusion center. First thing you have to do at the infusion center is draw labs. And then you wait for your labs to come back before you can start chemo because they want to make sure your body can tolerate the chemotherapy. Well, I got a port, which I loved because my port prevented me from having to be stuck and prevented chemo from going into my fragile arm veins, although some people get ports in their arm. I had my port here. I asked them to place it lower so that you can't see my scar or even the port when I'm wearing a V-neck shirt. Voila. But I also named it. And I actually asked my friends to help me name it. And my friend Julie came up with Voldeport. And so I introduced my nurses to Voldeport. Are you laughing? Because we certainly were. Every time. It never failed. And the laughter that erupted was medicine. After the labs, if my friend was still here, we talked. Otherwise, I'd talk to my mom. I'd put on my playlist. My rabbi had sent me a list of songs that were prayers that just made me feel grounded and centered and of gratitude. Gratitude for my caregivers, for my friends, for the medication, for the science. And that gratitude, that's medicine too. I asked my son, who was across the country playing baseball, to send me a letter every week. He was a college freshman. He was 3,000 miles away and he couldn't come home. These letters only were for infusion day and they were digital chocolate. They were delicious. They were about his life. They were a way for me to connect with him, but I have 12 letters from my son his freshman year of college. I'll treasure those forever. My older son, well, he'd call me and he'd just tell me about his class, his day, what was going on. And I'd have my headset and I'd just be listening, and it was great. A friend of mine sent me a wooden cylinder with 12 different hearts of reasons she loved me. When I went into the infusion center, I'd take that out and I'd put it on my side table. It was like a talisman. I could open it and see one, or I just held it knowing it was there. Then I brought Stego. Let me show you Stego. This is Stego. Stego is a stuffed stegosaurus that my husband bought as a little get well after I got my port. But Stego is perfect because I could slip my wrist ID band off my wrist onto Stego and hold Stego. And then I could go fall asleep with Benadryl. And as they were checking the ID to make sure I'm me, to make sure the chemo is safe, they could scan Stego. Plus, I got to cuddle with a stegosaurus. I had fluffy slippers that I only wore on chemo days. Something special. I had a fleece that I wore, an aromatherapy locket that I brought, and I rested on my chest, dabbed with just a touch of lavender or bergamot. Only I could smell it. But now the antiseptic infusion center became a field of lavender. It was a secret sanctuary. The infusion center had a steady supply of heated blankets that kept me warm while the cold cap and the ice mittens and the ice socks chilled my extremities. And then there was lunch. It was, who knew what was coming? My visiting friends would decide, was I going to have tomato soup and grilled cheese? Chinese dumplings? Chicken parm? The surprise was part of the joy. And luckily, the antiemetics were good enough that I didn't mind eating. These happiness tripwires just kept going when we went home. Somebody, a friend, would pick me up and drive me home, so I got to connect with another friend. I'd come home and a friend had brought a meal so my family could eat. And then I'd usually sit on the couch, maybe go back to sleep, maybe go upstairs. But after this long day, I had been peppered with little moments of happiness. Here's what I want you to know. The happiness tripwires were a way I could let people help me. They brought joy to me and to other people. Things like the drivers and the meals. My best friend Jessica, she was the coordinator, my chief logistics officer, the air traffic controller of love. Letting someone take that on, letting someone help, that was a happiness tripwire too. I'm not telling you my infusion days were easy. Cold caps are uncomfortable. I hated the ice mittens and the ice socks. Chemo is chemo. Sometimes your stomach doesn't feel great. But I'm telling you this. By the time I reached the end of 12 cycles of chemo, my oncologist said my labs didn't look like a chemotherapy patient's labs. Am I just uniquely tolerant? Was it the happiness tripwires? Love? Laughter? Who knows? But I know this. I felt held. I felt loved. I felt human. I didn't feel like a diagnosis. So, if you've gotten this far, it's time to pause the video or the audio and make a list. What are some happiness tripwires you have? Things that make you smile, that you can stack into your hardest days. Is it a phone call? Is it a picture? You can use a memory as a happiness tripwire. It's just a routine, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be a playlist. It can be a comfort object. It can be a text. It can be a letter. It can be a scent that transports you somewhere entirely. It can be planning a mini milestone, a celebration that you've completed your first chemo or your first 6. You get to design this. Cancer came to you, but you get to choose how you go through it. May your days be filled with happiness tripwires. Go kick cancer's ass.